Hello friends, welcome to the Handyman dev stream, and we're gonna get started here in just a moment. Today I plan on working on setting up the camera for the scene in day 9 and working on some getting the hair rigged for the Dean, and that might be as far as we get. We'll see if we have any detours or if anything else comes up, but that is kind of the plan. So I can kind of show you where we're at, and we'll get started here. Start up the game here. So right now I've got it set so that Grant can actually initiate the scene just right away out the gate, just so we can get the camera set up without having to do all the necessary steps to get the scene going in reality. But we'll let Tanya yell at us real quick. I've moved the microphone, so I hope it's in a little bit better place than it was in the past, right next to the mouse and keyboard. It's kind of off to my side, which might create some odd audio dynamics, but hopefully it'll be alright. Hopefully it'll be better. But anyway, here you can see this is kind of just the very beginning of the scene here, and what we want to do is have, when that starts up, for the camera system to take over. So we want to get that set up. So the first thing I want to do is actually, I'm just going to take an existing camera system from a previous day and drop it in there. So most likely the one that would make the most sense is going to be the one from day 5, because it's already in that room. So let's see here. So this should be it here. Let's jump over here to the other screen. And then turn on the gizmos so we can see it. So here's, I'll kind of briefly explain what you're looking at here. So this is basically, the pink dots are the different points that the camera can spawn. More specifically, so they're, the way I've term them is as camera mounts. So here's an example of a camera mount. This one's in the closet, and so the game is going to pick one of these. I'll jump over to the other screen so you can see what I'm talking about. So here's my camera setup, and these are the different mounts, and each one of these is like a cluster of several points, and the game is going to basically pick one of these mounts. So here's one, here's one, here's one. Let me actually do it like this so you can kind of see what I'm doing. So there's this one in the closet here, and then there's this one. Where's that one? It's up here for some reason. So this one is actually going to be attached to her hip, so it's not in a logical spot at the moment, but once the scene starts, it'll attach to Carly's hip. But anyway, most of these are just located inside the room. But the game is going to pick one of these mounts, and then it's going to pick 2 points within the mount. So any of these, in this case 5 different points, and then it's going to interpolate between those 2 points that it picks. So it might be this one and this one, and then it's just going to move between them. It'll pick kind of a point in the middle of them, and then another point in the middle of them, and then shift from that one point to the other to kind of have a sort of a setup camera place, but with some variety to make it a little bit more dynamic. So we're we're going to do here is we're going to take this and then we're going to shift it around. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to unpack this so it's no longer related to the day 5 one. And we're going to change that to 9. Just call it Carly Math. And then we're going to, like right out of the gate, it should be fairly functional. It's just that these camera points are not going to be looking in the right place. So what I want to do is I want to, so you can see over here on the right hand side is the information for the camera system. I want to drop in my 2 characters who I want to focus on. So Carly is the number 1, and then for right now it's going to be the player. And then based on that, the camera should then lock in on those characters. So that in how it does that is with these focus points. So these focus points, based on who I just dropped in there, it's going to focus on their different body parts. So here this focus is kind of in the middle of their upper bodies. So you can see here on the right hand side it's looking at her upper chest and then his upper chest as well, and it's going to take the point in between those 2 points. So we're just going to leave basically this stuff as it is, and then we'll make adjustments as we see fit. So let's just see if it works first of all. So we'll get this started and we'll, oh, you know, it won't work. I didn't connect it. It's in there, but I didn't tell Carly to turn it on, basically. So first we need to actually turn it off, because otherwise it's going to pull those characters into their spots. Yeah, actually, let me, so I want it, so it's set up, this camera system was set up for the scene where Carly's painting, and we want to change the locations of where it's going to want them to be. And so let's get rid of that, and then drop in these 2 points here. And then we want to tell Carly to turn on that camera system. Now it should work. Sorry, I just lost my feed to the stream here, so I'm just starting that back up so I can keep an eye on it. Alright, so you can see it did kick in properly. And camera's moving around, so let's actually jump over to the other screen here so we can see what's happening. So you can see the camera is, now that most of the points are kind of over here, and this is based on the scene that took place as I said, where she's painting, and they're kind of over here towards the end of the beds. So that's it. Well, the main thing we're going to be doing here is every time I hit middle mouse, it turns off the camera system. But you can see the green line indicates where the camera is selecting to go, and based on that you can kind of tell which mount it's looking at. And you can see over here, you can see this is the focus point that it's looking at, which is going to inform whether or not. So the other component to this, and I don't think there's anything set up currently for this scene, is what are camera blockers. So basically we would want to set those up around obstructions to the scene. So areas where for instance, if it were to get behind this lamp here or something like that. But and you can see there's a weird camera choice here. I'm not sure what. So I think this camera spot was supposed to be on the bed, and then it's looking at their hip, so it's like right in his hip. So that would be a good example of a camera we want to move. But we're going to move a lot of these around. So let's stop it here. And let's just start moving things around a bit. Alright, first of all, let's grab that one. Even though it kind of doesn't matter. Let's grab the hips. And then, so this one's actually attached to his hips. And let's pull it down into the room. The only reason it really matters at all is because there's often like a split second when it starts up, if it happens to select this camera mount, where it's gonna be up in that room. So there'll be like a split second where the camera's looking from a weird angle, which won't be ideal. So we're just gonna pull that one down into the room for right now. We're going to leave one in the closet, but we'll move these points around a little bit, kind of based on looking at her over here. It's not a bad placement, but maybe just so it's not the same as the other scene, maybe we'll move these up. So here would be a good place where we might want to add some camera blockers. So I'm thinking I'll put the camera spots above the clothing, but if we don't put them above the clothing, we might want to put some camera blockers by the clothing so that so they don't obstruct it. I don't mind a little bit of obstruction because that can kind of give it a cinematic feel, but you obviously don't want it to be sitting there blocking the camera for a long amount of time. Maybe just pull these ones up a little bit more. Pull them up and then move them back a little bit too. So I don't know if this is going to look good or not. We'll find out when we get there. So that's kind of where our points are. Let's go with that for now and move on. This was his hips. So like I said, most of these are stationary, but there's some that are attached to their body parts. So they will be moving from where they currently look like they are. The pink bed. Okay, so this is probably the one. This is the worst one. So we definitely don't want that one where it is. I guess let's just move it in between the two beds. So we're going to just grab all the points and slide them over. And then we'll actually, what I'm going to do is, because this second floor is kind of bothering me, I'm going to hide that. So it's no longer blocking my view. Alright, that should be better. Alright, so, I mean, there's not, I mean, it's kind of basically just random, so it doesn't matter too much, but we'll just, I guess we'll cluster them a little bit closer to each other, so it's kind of slightly more specific of a point. Something like that. So the only thing I was considering is maybe moving it over kind of more behind the plant here, so you do get kind of an obstructed view, but we'll just leave it as is for now. So this one is over by the door. I think I'm just going to leave that one for right now. So this one is attached to her chest, which is probably not going to be super useful because of the way she's laying down. But maybe we can just reposition it. So let's first of all, let's jump over here, and we're going to actually drop it into her chest to see how it actually sits currently. And then we'll just move the points. So we'll keep it in her chest, but we'll move the points so they make more sense with the way that she's laying. So this is kind of the position that it would be in, which would make sense in most cases, but because she's kind of laying face down, it's probably not a great place for them. So let's just kind of try and take into account the fact that she's laying face down and then move them based on that. So I'm going to move them even further up, like this. Maybe that's too far. We'll try like that and see if we can figure out how that's going to look when it actually runs. Sorry, just realized you're not seeing what I'm seeing. So I'm putting them up higher, like that. So as opposed to being kind of out here in front, now they're kind of above her, which when she's laying down on her stomach should look better, be a better position, but we won't know until we're actually running it and it comes up. And it's right now it's just going to come up randomly, so we'll just kind of keep our eye open and try and figure out where that's happening. And then she's got a face mount. So actually the only other thing I want to do is I want to look where this, so here in the camera setup is where this is where it tells the camera which camera mounts look at which points, which focus points. So what I want to do is I want to find this her chest mount right camera mount, and then see what focus point it's looking at, because depending on what focus point it's looking at, it may need to change. Her chest mount right, so that's this one. So it's looking, yeah, so it's looking at her boobs. Oh, I got music coming in. Stop that music. And so anyway, the camera mount is looking at her boobs, so we don't want her to look at her boobs because her boobs are, again, face down. So let's just put it to her face instead. So swap this out with this. So now it should look at her face. Alright, and then one other one I definitely want to move is this one by the window, which worked just fine for the other scene, but for this scene it's not going to work because they're sitting over here on the bed, and this camera mount is behind the window, so that's going to look weird. So let's get rid of that one and just move it somewhere else. We can move it in front of the window. So I guess let's do that. Keep it by the window. We'll add a couple extra points. So now I've got 4 points, but two of them are in the same place as other ones. So I'm just gonna scatter these a little bit. Oh, and then I gotta add the two that I just drop these in here. And then there we go, we got 4 points now. And so it's kind of a similar thing now based on the new positioning. Wherever that camera happens to be looking at may not make sense with our current scene. So let's take a look at that. So this is room mount 6 window. So that one's here. So it's looking at her hips. I don't know if that's a good place or not. Let's go with their upper bodies and see if that makes more sense. And I guess let's just go ahead and run this and see. Basically, we're just going to keep our eyes open and see where it looks wrong. Is basically what it boils down to. We're going to just let it run and see when the camera suddenly goes to a place that doesn't make sense, and then we'll make adjustments. So this is one we didn't adjust. That was on the bed there, on the other bed. So that's our. So that looks okay, but it's just, again, it's picking 2 points, so the other 2 may not work. This is probably the window. I'm not sure. By default, probably most of these are going to look okay, but there's going to be a few here and there that probably the thing is it's going to be the camera is either in a place that doesn't make sense, or it's looking at a place that doesn't frame as well. But so far I think everything's looking okay. I mean, the main thing is we still got most of our camera points are out over kind of in that corner. So there's just a little bit too much similarity. Like there is a great example of two similar. Yeah, so I think everything's looking in decent places, but we want to start moving our cameras around a little bit so that they feel different. Alright, there's definitely some cameras that it just didn't happen to land on, but we'll run into those eventually. So yeah, so the main cluster, as we talked about, is still over there. So We can definitely fill in this space a little bit, so let's do that. So I'm just gonna jump over to the other screen here and kind of go down the list and see where these cameras are. So that's the closet. Yeah, that one's his hip. Pink bed. Entrance. We'll leave that one above right. So that one. So that one. Let's move this one down in front of her. And then let's have that look at her face. Changes to say foot of bed. And so some of these are too low. Yeah, we'll move it closer to the foot of the bed. That one looks good. That one looks fine. This one's too low, it's underneath the floor, so we'll bring that up. Slide it over here maybe. Bring this one up. See how that looks. So that one's too close to the bed. Which one is that? This one. And then we're going to aim this at her face, I think. We may find that when we get into the scene that's doesn't work, but we'll start with that. So we're looking for room mount 4 foot of bed. Okay, so it's actually already looking at her face, so that works fine. Or at least we hope it works fine. Above center, that's fine. Her chest mount right is what we were already looking at. So this one's mounted to her face. We'll leave that one for now. That's the window we were just looking at. So this is the other bed, that's fine. So we have a second door area. Got entrance and door. Yeah, so we can definitely get rid of one of these. We'll get rid of this door one. Question is, where do we want it? So let's see here. So one thing we could do is we could go kind of airborne. That might look good. So let's try that. Kind of above the bed. So we'll be looking down. And what we're really trying to do is just get a nice variety of camera angles and shots to help mix things up so it doesn't get too stagnant. And we may end up wanting to tweak that, but let's start with that. Let's just see where the camera is pointed at. So that's room mount 8 high. So it's focused on her hips, which makes sense, I think, to keep. And let's give it a run. So this is the one at the foot of the bed, obviously. At least so far, I think that looked good. It might, depending on how the scene progresses, might not work as well. Went back to that, which is not ideal, but does happen from time to time. That was our above camera shot, I think. So you can see we are getting quite a bit more variety of shots as opposed to kind of everything just being over in the corner. Before, everything looked more like this. So one thing I'm noticing is a lot of these shots are a little bit too quick. So we can make adjustments to that to lengthen the amount of time that a shot is. It's to some degree of random, but we can increase the potential length of it, which will increase the average length of it then. So we don't want to do that with all of them, but we'll do that with some of them. So jump over to this screen here. And so just this is our camera setup here. So you can see here the frequency tells the game how often it should attempt to look at it. The higher the number is, the more frequent it's likely to come up. So this is a fairly low frequency. And I'm just going to bump up. I'm not going to bump up everything, but we'll bump up quite a few of these to make the shots last a little bit longer. We don't want them to be a lot longer, we just want them to be, we don't want them to be too quick. And let's take a look at maybe some other places we could drop in a few more camera spots to help mix things up a little bit. Something maybe somewhere kind of far off on this wall. Let's do something like that. Just going to take this point here and duplicate it and change the name of it, and then we'll move the points. So I'm thinking I want them to be, I don't want them to be that high, but basically right up against the wall. So maybe do that so we can see our positioning better. And then we'll just kind of shift these around a little bit. So basically, the more spread out your points are, the faster the camera's going to move, because it's going to cover that distance in the same amount of time. So, for example, if it picks these 2 points, it's going to be it's going to have a set amount of time, whatever it picks as the amount of time. So let's say 5 seconds. It's going to traverse between these 2 points much slower in the 5 seconds than if it picks these 2 points here. So the more spread out your points are, the faster your camera is going to be moving, which, depending on what you want, you can make happen. So because this is kind of a further away shot, let's try spreading them out, and then that can potentially add some nice variety to the shots we have as well. If you have a couple shots that maybe move a little bit more than others. So actually I'm going to get rid of one of these points, keep that one, get rid of that one, and then so we'll have 4 points, and then we'll kind of spread them out sort of evenly. So let's see how that fills the space. I think that's good. Then we have to actually add that to our list. So I'm going to add in a new spot here, and we'll drop in our camera mount. And then the question is, what are we focusing on? So I think by default we want to focus on her hips, especially from this angle here, because her hips are kind of the center of our focus. So let's go with that, and then we'll make this a fairly frequent thing with a pretty decent amount of time. Maybe let's do one more. Maybe we'll do one kind of from this angle, but just make it a low frequency, so it's a bit of variety, but it's not the greatest camera angle. But maybe we'll do 2 points, one here and then one here, and it will kind of traverse and then go behind this lamp for a nice kind of simple cinematic going past an object kind of look. And in this case we're not going to add in the blocker, because the blocker is going to stop the camera, so meaning that it's going to tell the camera, hey, there's something blocking your camera, switch to a different location. And in this case we actually don't want it to do that, because we want to keep that obstruction, because it's pretty minimal, but at least in theory. But we'll see how it actually looks. So I'm just going to, let's just grab one. That's fine. We'll grab this one, copy it, and say behind, change this to 10. We're going to get rid of all but 2 of the points. And then we're going to move our points behind the lamp. Whoops. So we want one kind of there, and then one basically next to it. So let's actually drop it in there. We'll drop it so it's parented to the other one, and then we're gonna move its positioning to be at the same place, and then we're just going to slide it over so that it's actually perfectly parallel with it, like that. Now we might want to adjust it, but that gets us right where, so I don't have to sit there tweaking it so much. So in this case, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to picture. So he's here, and then she's here. I think rather than focusing on their hips, I'm going to focus on kind of her chest, to kind of center them in their totality in the frame, I think is what I want. But we'll try that and then see how it looks in the actual game. So for the sake of just testing this, I'm going to actually make it much more frequent than it will be in the actual game. But I'm going to, I said, no, I don't want to do that. I want to grab her boobs and then focus on those. And then let's give this a run. And see how things look. And start it up, see how this looks. So that's the one we were already familiar with. So here's the one we just did. Didn't last very long, but I thought it looked pretty good. This, I believe, is our one from above. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually pull this over here so we can kind of see them at the same time, see their locations with how it actually looks. Whoops, I gotta undo that. There, so now we're behind. Probably I should make that last longer so I can see it better. But you can see as the camera changes where it's popping up in the world position. That's weird. Oh, I see. It just looked like it was coming from the closet, but when I rotate the camera, I can see it's coming from behind, which makes more sense. So, in general, I think everything is looking fine. As the scene progresses and as they maybe change their positions a bit, I might need to make some adjustments, but in general I think we're in pretty good shape here. So I'm going to just do a little tweak. I'm going to make that one for behind last longer, but I'm also going to make it pop up less frequently, although it hasn't popped up too much. But regardless, I'm going to drop its frequency. So oh, you know what? I never adjusted the time. That's why it was so short. Alright, so we'll do that. I'll drop it down to 26.4. Alright, I think that's going to do it for that. As I said, as the scene progresses, things might need to change. And one thing we didn't deal with at all is the camera positions for the orgasms, but seeing as they aren't in the game at the moment, the animation isn't done for those, and I wouldn't be showing that here anyway. That'll wait for a later date. But at any rate, I think that is set. The only thing I really need to so with this day, if you're not familiar from previous dev streams, is Omar is going to be the main person who's actually going to be interacting with Carly. So, but what I've decided to do is make it so it's possible for Grant to basically be involved in the scene. So Omar is kind of the default to be in the scene, but I've decided to make it so Grant can be in the scene as opposed to Omar, depending on what you have going on in previous days. So if you're dating Chantel, for example, that's not going to be an option. But one thing I have to get set up is you can see that I've set up so that right now the player is the focus person, meaning that the camera knows to look at the player's body parts. But I actually want, by default, Omar to be the one, but I need to have the game switch that up, or be able to switch that up during the game. So by default, it's going to be Omar, but depending on what you do, it can be switched to the player. So, and that shouldn't be too hard. I just don't have anything set up for it at the moment. But we're going to worry about that at a later date. Other thing I need to worry about is, so if Omar is going to be the one who's in the scene, the question then becomes, how does that work? Because typically Grant is the one in the scene, and so you're controlling Grant, and so what happens when the scene starts and it's Omar and you're the player, because all of a sudden the scene switches from focusing on Grant because you're just playing the game, and then all of a sudden the camera is now focused on Carly and Omar. What happens to Grant during that? But that is also something to worry about a little bit later. I think what we're going to do now is try and work on let me did it switch to the proper screen. We're gonna get Dean's hair set up here. Which can be kind of painful, but hopefully it won't be too painful. So what we need to do right now, her hair is just a static mesh, meaning that it doesn't deform at all. So you can see if we start up the game, her hair does not sway back and forth as she walks. It's just a solid brick. So we want to incorporate the bones. Like you see, her hair doesn't move at all. It's just static with her head, as opposed to Tanya, whose hair moves, jiggles around. So we want to get the Dean set up in a similar manner. And every time I try and switch to this other screen, Maya wants to pop up with its help. So what first thing we want to do is get some bones set up in here. I'm hoping this won't be too painful, but this can be kind of a hassle. Probably are not going to finish this in this dev stream. Probably get the bones set up and maybe start weight painting. But we'll see how far we can get. And let's see. So let's start with getting some bones in here. So I'm just going to So this is right where her head is. That's her neck, and then her head joint is here. Right at the moment it is invisible. So that's just going to be our starting point. What I want to do is I want to line this bone up with her head bone. So this joint here is in the exact same position as her head bone, because in the game that's going to determine, this bone is going to determine where her hair is, and it's going to be lined up with her head bone. So start by doing that. So there's her head bone. We'll grab this joint here, and then we will lock it onto there. It looks like we're in the correct positions. Then I'm going to hide this again because this is fucking messy. Okay, so then basically the way this works is for each bone that we add on additionally here, the dynamic bone component that we're going to add on to this within Unity is going to make it jiggly. It's going to give it flexibility. So the more joints there are, the more swaying it's going to do. So basically, I mean, it's kind of makes sense as you'd expect. The longer the hair is, the more joints you want it to have to allow for sway. The trickier thing is going to be her bun up here, because I think I want to have just a little bit of jiggle, but not too much. So I think that's just going to be a one bone situation. But I'm not entirely sure that that's going to look good. So I might end up having to leave that completely static. But we'll start by trying to give that a little bit of flexibility. Oops, let me undo that because it's still trying to attach to different things. So we'll start by doing that. So this is going to be her bun. So there will be a slight amount of flexibility to that bone. And then we'll jump to the front here. So I think I'm just going to do one kind of in the center, and then let me make this so I can't click on it, because that's going to be annoying. There, now I can't click on it. So I want to move this. Is it on a weird angle? I can't see. Move this whole thing forward. I'm going to parent it to the main bone. And then probably add another joint because I don't feel like I have enough here. You know, maybe what I'll do here is get rid of the coloring, because I feel like that yellow is distracting. Alright, so I'm trying to match with this lock of hair here. Doesn't necessarily have to be exact, but the closer the better, so I might as well kind of line up with where it changes. So we'll add one more bone. So where this gets messy is, so we're going to have a bone for this hair and then a bone for this hair, and the mesh is going to want to link into both of these bones, and we are only going to want it to really link into one of the bones. That's where it gets kind of painful. Let's see. That's why you don't want to do it like that. Let's do it like this. So in Unity, it's going to, for each joint, it's going to apply basically some flexibility, and so the more joints there are, the more flexible it will be. That's why this entire bun, I'm thinking, will be attached to this one point here, so it should have some flexibility. The only thing I don't know is if it's going to be moving too much because it's so far away from this, if it's going to be like shifting even though it's only one joint. That's kind of the question. But I won't really know until we get into Unity with it. So I'm going to set it up as though it's all attached to that joint, but ultimately it may have to be completely separated, which isn't the worst, but I would prefer it to be connected, or be somewhat flexible, I should say. And let's do the, you know what, let's do it this way. Let's just take this joint here, duplicate it, and then move the pieces where I want them. Always grabbing things I don't want it to grab. So I just want to make sure it's not too funky. So here actually, so the bad thing is that it's going to screw up my whole rest of my skeleton. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you don't want it to be too off. It's not too bad. Just move this bottom one up. Yeah, actually, I'm going to move this one over, and then I'll have to move that other one back. Yeah, actually, I'm going to move this one over. Get it closer to the mesh. You're always best off getting your, because all the other ones are dependent on the ones above them, you want to make sure your upper ones are where they need to be first, which is not really what I just did, but it is what I should have done. Okay, so then these other ones obviously are going to be a little bit shorter. Let's do the same thing we did, only we're going to jump across to the other side. And do the other side first, because there's kind of sort of mirrored locks over on the other side. Hide the bones, actually. So we want to be underneath this lock right here. And back up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hide her main skeleton here because that's just noise at this point. That should help. So I'm just trying to basically get the joint in behind the mesh. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you want it to be pretty close. And we'll do the same thing over here on this one. Down a little bit. Maybe pull it over a little bit too. Okay, so that's those long locks, and then we've got 1, 2. So there's technically 2 locks here. I don't know how well you can see that, but there's 2 locks here. We're going to treat those as one. So we'll do 1 bone for those 2 locks. And I get this one for sure will be one. I was debating in my head just now of whether or not to attach this one to this. I think I will because they're so close. They're technically a shorter lock and this longer lock, but so I think we're going to add 3 bones. 1, 2, and then 3. And then I think we will do bones for these little guys, seeing as it's not too complicated so far. So, but at any rate, we're gonna start with this and add in bones from here. So we want there to be fewer bones, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those. Thinking only 3 here. You know what, it should have been 4, because this is, I'm going to want it to start here. And then, it's a really weird angle. Oh man, that's way off. Start here. Down a little bit. Bring this whole thing down a little bit. And we will add another bone onto here. oops, I want to parent it to that one there. Dang it. And there we go. Alright, and then we'll just quickly duplicate this and then bring it over, and so this is going to serve as the bone for both of these locks. And we need to bring this up quite a bit. Because these locks stick out more. Down a bit and then bring this over. Alright, maybe just move this over a little bit and then move this back a little bit. Okay, so I think we will just do one more and then we're gonna probably call it a dev stream. And I will continue working on this and hopefully have it all rigged up and ready to go in the not too distant future. But let's just quick get this bone in here placed where we want it. This lock is a little bit shorter, so we'll bring this up like that. Oop, and then slide it over. And there we have it. I think we got the front of her hair boned up. Now, as I said, this is still just a mesh that isn't, it's a solid brick currently. We've got the bones in place to start to get it skinned, and then have to weight paint it and then bring it into Unity, and then once it's in Unity it should be basically, we just have to add the dynamic bone to give it that nice jiggle that we like. But so there's still a ways to go. Mostly boning the back here and then getting it weight painted, which is the worst. It's just the worst. I hate weight painting, but it needs to be done. So we'll get that done, and we'll catch you guys on the next dev stream. I'm thinking I'll try and do this every Saturday morning. But at any rate, guys, thanks for joining me, and see you next time.